They say the mind is a labyrinth, full of twists and turns we may never fully understand. Neuroses are the cracks in that labyrinth, small fissures that, when ignored, grow into gaping chasms. Fear, anxiety, compulsion. Each is a thread in the web that binds the mind to its vulnerabilities. Jacob knew this well. He wasn't just writing about fear, he was living it. Jacob sat hunched over the journal, the glow of his laptop highlighting the deep circles under his eyes. The storm outside had worsened, snow piling against the windows of the cabin. He hadn't slept in over 48 hours. His tics, small, uncontrollable twitches in his hands and face, had grown more pronounced. He attributed them to exhaustion, though deep down he knew they had been worsening ever since he arrived. On the laptop screen was a page of research notes. Jacob had been studying fear, not just for his book, but to understand his own mental unraveling. Neurosis, he read, is the brain's inability to silence the alarms of fear. A survival mechanism turned against itself. The sentence hit uncomfortably close to home. He glanced at the journal, its leather cover worn and cracked, as if it had endured more than just time. He opened it, flipping to where he had left off. Elias's latest entry was dated December 23, 1949. Jacob lit a cigarette, bracing himself for whatever truths or horrors lay ahead. The precinct buzzed with a nervous energy. Elias had barely set foot inside when Detective Yates shoved a file into his hands. "Another one," Yates said, his face pale. "This one's different." Elias opened the folder and froze. The victim was a child, just 6 years old. The boy's body had been found in his bedroom, clutching a small stuffed bear. His face, though, was what chilled Elias. It was contorted in terror, frozen in a scream. No physical wounds, no signs of a struggle. Just the same inexplicable, overwhelming fear. Parents said he'd been talking about a friend, Yates added. An imaginary one. Said it was the man with the shadows. Elias clenched his jaw, his fingers tightening on the folder. He had heard variations of that name in the previous cases. A dark figure, a shadowy presence. Something that couldn't be explained away by rational means. Jacob paused, exhaling a cloud of smoke. His heart pounded in his chest as he reread the description of the child. The man with the shadows. The phrase lingered in his mind like a whisper he couldn't quite shake. He glanced toward the darkened corner of the cabin, his imagination conjuring shapes where none existed. He flipped back to his interview notes, searching for connections. One entry stood out. Miriam, a woman who had spoken about her childhood fears of a figure she called the Watcher. She described him as a shadow that grew darker the more she ignored him. Her final words in the transcript made Jacob's blood run cold. The more you try to pretend it isn't there, the closer it gets. The boy's room was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that feels heavy, oppressive. Elias stood in the doorway, scanning the scene. The stuffed bear lay on the floor now, its button eyes staring blankly. The parents sat in the living room, inconsolable. Elias didn't bother them with questions, not yet. He needed to see for himself what the boy had been so terrified of. The room itself seemed ordinary at first glance, but Elias's attention was drawn to the mirror above the dresser. Its surface was cracked, and for a moment, Elias thought he saw movement within the fractured reflection. He blinked, and it was gone. He muttered under his breath, almost as if to ground himself, "What do you fear most?" He turned to leave, but stopped when he noticed something scratched into the wooden floorboards near the bed. Kneeling down, he traced the marks with his fingers. The words were crude, carved with what seemed like frantic energy. "He's here." Jacob's hands trembled as he read. His cigarette had burned down to the filter, the ash falling onto the journal. He swiped it away, his mind racing. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. The parallels between his interviews and Elias's cases were becoming harder to ignore. The Watcher, the man with the shadows, different names for the same entity. Or was it just his tired mind connecting dots that weren't there? The wind howled outside, rattling the cabin's windows. Jacob poured himself another drink, hoping it would steady his nerves. But as he brought the glass to his lips, he froze. In the reflection of the glass, just for a split second, he saw something. A shadow, darker than the room around it. He spun around, but the cabin was empty. The next morning, Elias returned to the precinct, determined to dig deeper into the boy's case. He spread the files of all 4 victims across his desk, searching for patterns. The victims ranged in age, gender, and background, but they all shared one detail. They had spoken of a presence before their deaths. As Elias pored over the reports, a colleague approached him, holding a small envelope. "This came for you," they said, dropping it onto his desk. Elias opened it carefully, his pulse quickening. Inside was a single piece of paper, blank except for one chilling sentence. "He knows you're looking." The note smelled faintly of burnt wood, as if it had been held over a fire. Elias's hand hovered over his gun, an instinctive reaction. Jacob closed the journal, his breathing shallow. The storm outside had finally calmed, but the stillness only heightened his unease. He felt as though the cabin was watching him, the shadows creeping closer with every passing moment. He stood and walked to the window, peering out into the night. The forest stretched endlessly, a sea of black and white. But then, in the distance, he saw it, a figure standing just at the edge of the tree line. Jacob's breath caught in his throat. He blinked, and the figure was gone. He turned back to the journal, flipping to the next page. But the ink had changed. The neat handwriting was now frantic, scrawled across the page in uneven lines. "Don't look. Don't let it see you." Jacob slammed the journal shut, his heart racing, and then from somewhere outside he heard it, a soft knock at the cabin door. Fear is not just a shadow. It's a reflection of the truths we dare not face. Jacob's unraveling tale pulls him deeper into Elias's chilling world. But with every page turned, the line between the real and the imagined blurs further. What secrets will the next chapter reveal? If you've enjoyed this chapter, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to join us for the next episode. Your support helps us uncover what lies hidden in the shadows. See you soon, if you dare.